From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Tapping the trees for something pretty tasty.
One of the biggest runs I've seen for a first run.
We check in on maple syrup season in upstate New York. Some hopeful signs for possibly ending the crisis at the border.
We do have a bipartisan deal. We're finishing the text right now.
As China faces some tough financial news.
Of course, this is putting fear that the Chinese economy may dip significantly.
The impact that could have on farmers and ranchers here at home right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. We're getting new signs that China's economy is slowing down. And that could impact how much ag America's largest buyer continues to purchase. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us. And Michelle, some new economic news coming out of Beijing on Monday pushed the markets down.
Yeah, that's right, Clinton. China's largest real estate firm is being forced to dissolve after 2 years of trying to restructure. China's poor economic data, though, has been mounting for months, along with their falling grain prices and a 3-year low in their stock market. Just another reason for their lagging purchases of U.S. goods. Signs are mounting of economic slowdown in China. Even some experts say borderline recession. Monday news broke of the insolvency of property giant China Evergrande Group, the world's most indebted developer with more than $300 billion of total liabilities.
Evergrande, a large real estate development firm, which has been in trouble for a very long time, but was told by a Hong Kong court that they needed to liquidate. And of course, this is putting fear that the Chinese economy may dip significantly and that somehow that economic dip may have some impact on demand for agricultural commodities from the United States.
Last week, the Chinese government surprisingly stepped in with additional economic stimulus efforts, announcing fund injection of 2 trillion yuan to stabilize the stock market. Plus, China's central bank made the biggest cut in more than 2 years to the amount of cash banks must hold in reserves. That's to free up 1 trillion yuan to the market. Now, the market response was initially positive, but it didn't hold.
Mainly, I think, because the Asian markets, Thursday night, Friday morning, they just didn't get done what they needed to. In other words, the Hong Kong stock market didn't rally above resistance. The offshore Chinese currency didn't rally above resistance either. So I felt like that the macro demand side of the equation was a really big player.
The World Bank is projecting China growth or GDP at 4.5% this year, the slowest in 30 years. This could curb U.S. exports further in 2024. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Now, something else that's expected to have a big impact on the cattle market later this week, the release of the latest cattle inventory report from USDA. And that report may tell us if the cattle herd is still contracting or if there are signs of a change on the horizon. Now, key numbers we'll be watching: the number of beef cows that are in the inventory, as well as the number of heifers that are being retained for replacement. That will give us a sense of the breeding stock, along with the number of cattle outside of feedlots.
The number of cattle outside feedlots. And this will give us an indication of really what is the available supply for future placements going into 2024 and the implications that that has for the entire supply chain and prices for feeder cattle, as well as fed cattle and wholesale beef prices.
We only get this report twice a year. The report comes out on Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern. Now, those important cattle numbers coming out as CattleCon, the annual cattle industry convention and National Cattlemen's Beef Association trade show, gets underway. This year, it's taking place in Orlando, Florida, from Wednesday through Friday. And look for team coverage on several Farm Journal platforms. For the broadcast team, AgDay's Michelle Rook and U.S. Farm Report's Tyne Morgan will be there, and we'll bring you coverage this week on AgDay. Tyson has officially opened a new bacon plant in Bowling Green, Kentucky. The 400,000 square foot plant is expected to produce 2 million pounds of bacon under the Jimmy Dean and Wright brand names, along with bacon used for food service. Now, the plant is located in Warren County and will create nearly 450 new jobs in the south central part of the state. The Bowling Green plant features high-tech robots that help eliminate such tasks as transporting large pork bellies along several production lines, packing and stacking boxes, and moving product through production areas with driverless forklifts. Tyson says bacon represents more than $1 billion in sales for the company. It won't feel much like winter in parts of the Midwest this week. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht joins us with an MP.
Yeah, and here's a look at that temperature outlook. We visited this map last week for a similar time frame, which is kind of the start of February. This goes all the way into the first week of February through the 7th. And you can still see that blocking pattern that we were talking about last week, firmly in control of the warmth or heat coming through the Midwest and the plains. A very good chance of some above average temperatures, above normal temperatures. Now keep in mind, highs and lows this time of year start to come up a degree or two as we work through the month of February. The other thing to keep in mind is that when we are above average with the deep red or the dark red up here, that does not mean a significant amount of degrees above average. Rather, that's pointing to the chances of above average temperatures. So really high chance of seeing some of those warmer temperatures in across the Midwest, and then a trough developing back out towards the west and the east is going to keep things cool. And how about this? Part of an interstate in Indiana had to be shut down after a trailer carrying zoo animals caught on fire. This happened in Grant County. The sheriff's office sharing these pictures on social media. You can see there were camels and zebras. All of the animals were rescued safely, and officers even gave them a snack of some hay. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
One of California's largest growers and packers of tree fruit is reportedly selling thousands of acres of land and laying off workers. The company is Prima Wawona. The Fresno Bee reporting on this, saying the company is making plans to lay off more than 5,400 workers and sell off 16,000 acres of land. That company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy back in October, reporting more than $600 million in debt. In court documents, the newspaper says the demise is blamed on a lack of understanding about the tree fruit industry and mismanagement. It says the company tried to get a new buyer, but none met the minimum bid of $275 million. It's reported the company's chief executive officer sent a letter to its workforce earlier this month that their employment would end by the middle of March. The farmland is valued at an estimated $370 million. Of key interest for farmers and ranchers along the southern border, work continues on a bipartisan border agreement in Congress. Rick Damagella has the latest.
A bipartisan deal on securing the U.S. southern border could be ready in just days.
We do have a bipartisan deal. We're finishing the text right now.
Senator Chris Murphy, a key negotiator on a possible border deal, said Sunday that text of a border compromise could be ready to go to the Senate floor next week. And President Biden has said he would sign it right now.
If that bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly. And Congress needs to get it done.
Components of the deal include a new authority that allows the president to shut down the border between ports of entry when unlawful crossings reach high levels, also reforming the asylum system to resolve cases in a shorter time frame, and expediting work permits. Aid to Ukraine is also a sticking point tied to the deal, which Democrats say is critical for Ukraine to defeat Russia.
The consequence of failure here is not just that we keep immigration as an open issue available for Donald Trump to exploit in the next election. It is also that Ukraine loses this war.
Also weighing in the mix is former President Donald Trump, who called on GOP members of Congress to nix the deal so he can campaign on securing the border during the election.
A lot of the senators are trying to say respectfully they're blaming it on me. I said, that's okay, please blame it on me, please. Because they were getting ready to pass a very bad bill.
Optimism still was high that a bipartisan deal could be finalized next week, despite ongoing turmoil. I'm Rick Damagella reporting.
Soybeans drop below $12 on the futures board Monday. We'll look at what's moving markets next. And later, a hard freeze and fast warm-up has sap flowing in upstate New York. We'll check on the maple syrup season in the country. A Pennsylvania jury has ordered Bayer AG to pay over $2.2 billion to a former Roundup user who claims his cancer can be attributed to the weed killer. The verdict representing the largest in 5 years of litigation surrounding the herbicide. Bayer has won 10 out of 16 recent Roundup trials, but has faced significant losses. That includes a $1.5 billion verdict in Missouri last November. Now, Bayer, which acquired Monsanto back in 2018, has set aside up to $16 billion to resolve more than 100,000 Roundup cases. Bayer disagrees with the jury's verdict and plans to appeal, continuing to say it conflicts with scientific evidence and regulatory assessments. Corn and soybeans facing downward pressure again to start the week. Michelle Rook is back to take a deep dive in markets now.
Grains all lower on Monday. Garrett Toy Ag Trader Talk joining us. And Garrett, risk-off day on Monday in the grain trade. Where did all that come from? Was it China? Was it Brazil? What?
It was kind of a perfect storm here. I mean, obviously the managed money want to be short grains and any sort of story that they can find that can justify their position. Definitely does that. It was a combination of Evergrande in China, which was ordered to liquidate some of their positions. They're a big, kind of reiterates the concerns over the Chinese economy, which in my opinion, I think we've been kind of trading the situation, the Chinese poor crush margin since November, since, beans struggled at $14. That was the big reason, even in the midst of, at the time when we were really concerned about the drought in Brazil. On the other side of things is forecast in Argentina looked a little bit wider here today. And then just typical renewed selling. It was selling across the board. I mean, it was corn, it was wheat, it was beans. They were selling spreads. Everything was under pressure.
So soybeans, we landed or closed below $12 for the first time since last June. So now where do we find support on these charts?
Yeah, we're into the June-May consolidation area. Slowly starts to build here towards 11.75. I really, we'll see. Things just feel extremely heavy here. Those May lows are 11.45 1/4. That's going to be the downside target here if we can't hold this 11.75 area.
We did hold the contract low in corn, but how susceptible do you think that market is to going below that level? What's your thoughts?
I think we're kind of at a point now where we're starting to see some capitulation. It's my feeling that we get, farmer in the country still has, unpriced bushels in the bin. Obviously they don't want to sell these levels, but there's got to be some risk management at these levels of managing losses as well. And there may be some levels where they may try to, sell grain here. But I think for the most part, though, I mean, there is some localized basis opportunities for producers, especially in the ethanol plants. Especially, some basis is probably better than expected, considering we've got a 2-1 carry up. Even on the other hand, we're $2 lower on flat price than we were at this point last year. So there's some risk management opportunities here, I think, if you're paying attention to your localized markets.
Thanks so much. That is Garrett Toy Ag Trader Talk. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
They got a weak clipper system, and then that blocking pattern is going to set up in and across the United States. So if we want to talk about rain or snow, again, a weak system working in and across parts of Washington, D.C., Virginia, North Carolina, and then skirting back up towards the east. But since this isn't going to be taking a long track to the northeast, expecting conditions, the wind threat, the beach erosion threat, staying pretty low. That first one cuts through, and that is going to open up the possibility of more snow into parts of Maine, Vermont, and into the northeast. This is Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning. After that, the Omega block that we were talking about last week starts to take shape. This is Saturday at 4 p.m., so all the way through the next couple of days, you got the East Coast that's going to be bringing in some of that cooler air, the West Coast under some cooler air and very wet conditions, and then in between a ridge of high pressure, an amplified ridge of high pressure. Look how far north that line goes, all the way up into Canada. Now, I'm not expecting record high temperatures underneath this ridge. Rather, it's more the implications that this ridge is going to set up, and a lot of the energy and the moisture is going to be moving a lot slower from the west to the east. Now, we do need the rainfall into Texas, parts of Houston, Louisiana, even into Mississippi and Alabama. But once again, we're starting to see kind of a parade of storms rather than just a few inches here and there. It's a lot of rain over a short amount of time, a break, and then a return to those conditions. So that's what we're seeing. This is Saturday at 4 p.m. As it advances on through, you'll see that energy mainly stays to the south, with the ridge cutting off this low pressure system from working to the northeast. Now, what that's going to do is crazy meteorological setup that we're watching towards Saturday into Sunday. So what this is going to do is keep the energy to the south, but also limit a lot of the cold air that typically comes with these low pressure systems from driving down from north to south. Something we're going to be following very closely the next couple of days. Wildwood, mostly cloudy, high around 42 degrees, a chance of some mixed precipitation. What about Minnesota? Morning clouds and then some evening sun, high about 35 degrees. John Day, sunny in Oregon.
Hybrid Holsteins could make a big impact on milk production in one African nation. We'll tell you about the latest research coming up next. And later, we're off to upstate New York for a taste of tapping season. It's nearly maple syrup time in the country. Tanzania could soon see a big boost when it comes to dairy production. Researchers from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign coming up with a new breed of cow, one that can produce up to 20 times more milk than indigenous breeds. Researchers marrying dairy-producing Holsteins and Jerseys with Gears. That's an indigenous cattle breed common in tropical countries that is heat, drought, and disease resistant. They report 5 generations of crosses have resulted in cattle capable of producing 10 liters of milk per day under typical Tanzanian management. That's way more than the half-liter average of indigenous cattle. After breeding the first of these calves in the U.S., the project leader says they are ready to bring the embryos to Tanzania. Now, the team plans to implant 100 half-blood Holstein Gear or Jersey Gear embryos into indigenous cattle at 2 locations in Tanzania this March. And how about this, using facial recognition on cattle to help prevent disease? A study between animal ag tech startup MyAnimal and USDA just wrapped up. MyAnimal uses facial recognition and deep learning technology to predict bovine pink eye or IBK. Now they say, like a human fingerprint, each cattle muzzle is unique and can be used to track specific cows. It's reported the technology could detect IBK more than 99% of the time and several days before veterinarians were able to detect symptoms. Next, researchers are applying the system to predict bovine respiratory disease or BRV, which is the single most economically impacted cattle disease, costing the U.S. feedlot industry more than $900 million annually. All right, breakfast lovers, pay attention. It's almost maple syrup season. We're off to New York, where the sap is running and the syrup is ready for crowds to enjoy. In the country, next. New York State is home to more tappable maple trees than anywhere else in the U.S. And right now, over 2,000 maple producers in the state are getting ready for their busy season. One of them is Cartwright's Maple Inn. It's located in Angelica, New York in Allegheny County. John Kutchko visited ahead of opening day on February 6th.
They have been making maple syrup here at Cartwright since the mid-1800s. And the weather in the winter months, as we all know, can be very tricky. But this winter so far, the sap production has been off the charts, and the maple product should be excellent. These trees in Angelica in Allegheny County have been producing sap for decades. And this year, the sap production has been spectacular so far. And the expectation is that will result in terrific New York State maple syrup.
Well, it was quite frozen, as everybody knows, and when it came off, it just came off so fast. The trees, woke up, and man, they put out quite a bit of sap the last 3 days. One of the biggest runs I've seen for our first run.
It's a labor of love here at Cartwright's. Everyone in the family seemingly gets involved, a tradition that started over 170 years ago. That's when producing the syrup began, and jugs were delivered by horse and wagon across the Genesee Valley. The restaurant arrived in 1963, and the buckwheat pancakes were an instant hit, been that way ever since. Decades later, it's a Western New York brand that is a staple in the region and well beyond.
So this is like one of the original. There's no other place like this. And, I know a lot of other people have tried, and there are some good places, but I feel this is a one of a kind, always will be. And it's been many, many generations that have enjoyed it. And just what keeps people coming back is it's so authentic. And, where it came from, the roots are deep.
They opened for their 2-month season in just a handful of days on February 6th. There are always long lines during the weekends, but those lines tend to move fast. Generations of families have enjoyed this tradition for a very, very long time. In Angelica, I'm John Kutchko.
And our thanks to John Kutchko for that story. Now make sure to check out John Kutchko Digital on Facebook for more stories about farming in upstate New York. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.